The fog clung to the ancient oaks of Hargrove Manor like a shroud, muffling the world in eerie silence. It was a chill autumn evening in 1935 when the scream pierced the mist, sharp, desperate, echoing from the drawing room. Lady Evelyn Hargrove lay sprawled on the Persian rug, her elegant gown disheveled, a shattered gold locket clutched in her lifeless hand. The chain dangled broken, its secret compartment ajar, revealing a faded photograph torn in half. Who had poisoned her tea? The guests froze in horror as thunder rumbled overhead. Was it an accident or something far more sinister? Hercule Poirot, the renowned detective, would soon unravel the threads of deceit. Chapter 1: The Fatal Gathering. Inside, the great house held its secrets the way a miser clutches gold, tightly, resentfully, and with the faint metallic scent of fear. Hargrove Manor had stood since the reign of the second Charles, its Tudor bones wrapped in later Georgian flesh, its attic stuffed with the dust of 3 centuries. Portraits of bewigged ancestors glared down from the oak-paneled staircase, their painted eyes following every footfall. The air carried the mingled ghosts of beeswax, wood smoke, and the faint, sweet rot of apples left too long in the cellar. In the drawing room, a fire spat and hissed in a marble hearth carved with nymphs and satyrs. Above it hung a tapestry of the Judgment of Paris. The goddesses' faces faded to the color of old bone. The room's crimson drapes were drawn against the creeping dusk, and the chandelier, Waterford crystal, though one prism was missing, threw fractured rainbows across the Persian rug like spilled blood. Lady Evelyn Hargrove sat at the center of this tableau, straight-backed in a high-winged chair of faded brocade. She was 53, though she carried the years with the imperious grace of a woman who had never been contradicted. Her hair, once the gold of ripe wheat, was now silver-threaded with defiance. It was coiled beneath a black lace cap that spoke of mourning, though her husband still breathed. Her gown was charcoal silk, severe yet expensive, its jet beads catching the firelight like tiny obsidian eyes. Around her throat hung the locket, gold, oval, heavy with the weight of memory. She touched it now, absently as one might stroke a sleeping adder. Across from her, Lord Reginald Hargrove nursed a whiskey and soda. He was a thick-set man in his late 50s, his face a map of broken capillaries and suppressed rages. His tweed suit strained at the shoulders, the war had left him with a limp and a temper. He stared into the amber liquid as though it might offer absolution. "Reginald, do stop brooding," Evelyn said, her voice crisp as frost. "We have guests." Reginald grunted. "Guests? Hangers-on, more like." His nephew, Arthur Hargrove, lounged against the mantel, a cigarette dangling from languid fingers. At 28, he was the family's golden boy, gone slightly tarnished. Blonde hair, slicked back, eyes the pale blue of expensive gin. His tailor-made suit was Savile Row, but the cuffs were frayed, and his smile had the desperate brightness of a man who has lost at cards and cannot pay. "Aunt Evelyn, you wound me," he drawled. "I'm here for the pleasure of your company and perhaps a small loan." Evelyn's lips thinned. "You'll get neither until you learn the difference between Monte Carlo and a piggy bank." In the corner, Clara Winters arranged the tea things on a low table of burr walnut. She was 25, small-boned, with the kind of pale prettiness that wilts under scrutiny. Her maid's uniform, black dress, starched apron, cap pinned with military precision, could not quite hide the tremor in her hands. She had been with the family since she was 16, orphan daughter of a tenant farmer. Evelyn had taken her in, educated her, and then forgotten she was human. Clara set down the spode teapot with a clink that sounded too loud in the hush. "The Darjeeling is fresh, m'lady, and the scones are cook's best, clotted cream and black currant jam." Evelyn did not look at her. "See that the sugar bowl is filled." "You know how I detest lumps." Clara's cheeks flushed. "Yes, m'lady." The fourth guest arrived late, sweeping in like a stage actress making an entrance. Victoria Beaumont was 40, widowed and dangerous in the way only beautiful women with money can be. Her gown was emerald velvet cut daringly low, a rope of pearls glowed against her throat. Her perfume, jasmine and something darker, trailed her like a signature. "Darlings, forgive me," she purred, kissing the air near Evelyn's cheek. The train was beastly, and the fog, well, one simply crawls through it. Evelyn's smile did not reach her eyes. "Victoria, how good of you to grace us with your presence." Reginald's gaze lingered a fraction too long on Victoria's décolletage. Arthur's cigarette paused halfway to his lips. Clara busied herself with the cups, her reflection fractured in the silver teapot. Outside, thunder growled over the downs like a warning. Tea was served. The ritual unfolded with the precision of a court ceremony. Clara poured, first for Evelyn, then Reginald, then the guests. The teacups were eggshell thin, painted with forget-me-nots. The sugar bowl was Meissen porcelain, its lid a porcelain rose. Evelyn took 3 lumps, always 3, stirred counterclockwise with a tiny silver spoon. Arthur helped himself to a scone, slathering it with cream until it threatened to collapse. "Aunt, you simply must tell us about the locket again. The one with the mysterious gentleman." Evelyn's fingers closed over the gold oval. "There's nothing to tell. A keepsake from a foolish girl." "Come now," Victoria teased, her voice honey over broken glass. "We've all heard the whispers. A soldier, a promise, a heart broken on the fields of Flanders." Reginald slammed his cup into its saucer. "Enough of this sentimental rot. The war took what it took. Let the dead stay dead." Clara flinched at the sound. A drop of tea splashed onto the white tablecloth, spreading like a bloodstain. Evelyn's eyes narrowed. "Reginald, you forget yourself." "Do I?" He stood looming over the table. "This house is a mausoleum of your memories, Evelyn. Perhaps it's time we buried a few." Arthur laughed nervously. "Steady on, Uncle. We're all friends here." "Are we?" Evelyn's voice cut like a scalpel. She opened the locket with a click that silenced the room. Inside was a photograph, small and faded. A young man in uniform, his face half in shadow. The other half had been torn away, the edges jagged as a wound. Victoria leaned forward. "Who was he, Evelyn? Really?" Evelyn snapped the locket shut. "No one you knew." But her hand trembled. Clara refilled Evelyn's cup. The steam rose in delicate spirals, carrying the faint, bitter scent of almonds. No, not almonds. Something sharper, metallic. Conversation limped along after that. Arthur spoke of London nightclubs and a new revue at the Windmill. Victoria recounted a scandal involving a duke and a chorus girl. Reginald stared into the fire. Clara moved like a ghost, clearing plates, her apron rustling softly. Evelyn drank her tea slowly, savoringly. She had always savored things: power, secrets, the slow erosion of other people's dignity. At 4:17 precisely, Clara would remember the time because the ormolu clock on the mantel chimed the quarter. She set down her cup. "Clara," she said, "the jam is too sweet. Tell cook." Her words cut off. A strangled sound escaped her throat, half gasp, half cough. The teacup slipped from her fingers, shattering against the hearth. Porcelain shards glittered like ice. Evelyn clutched at her neck, fingers scrabbling at the locket's chain. Her face contorted, eyes bulging, lips turning blue. She tried to stand, but her knees buckled. She fell forward, the locket tearing free with a snap of gold links. It skittered across the rug, coming to rest beneath Victoria's chair. For a moment, no one moved. The fire crackled. Outside, the fog pressed closer, as if the house itself were holding its breath. Then chaos. "Evelyn!" Reginald lunged forward, catching her as she slumped. Her body was rigid, then suddenly limp. Arthur dropped his cigarette into the cream jug. "Good God! She's choking!" Clara screamed, a high animal sound, and ran for the door. "Doctor, fetch Dr. Hargreaves!" Victoria knelt, pressing fingers to Evelyn's neck. "She's not breathing. Reginald, do something!" Reginald's hands hovered uselessly. "Poison," he whispered, the word barely audible. "Arsenic. I can smell it." The locket lay open on the rug. The torn photograph stared up at them, a young man's face half missing, as if even in death he refused to be whole. Dr. Hargreaves arrived 20 minutes later, mud-spattered and breathless. He was a thin man with a mustache like a tired moth. He knelt beside Evelyn, listened to her chest, shone a light into her eyes. "Dead," he said simply. 10 minutes, perhaps 15. Cyanide? No, arsenic. The almond smell, the convulsions, classic. The local constable, a stout man named Briggs, puffed in behind him. Now then, no one leaves this room." Arthur laughed, a brittle sound. "Leaves? In this fog? We're prisoners already." Reginald stood over his wife's body, his face unreadable. "Who did this?" Clara sobbed in the corner, twisting her apron. "I poured the tea. I swear it was clean." Victoria retrieved the locket, holding it gingerly by the broken chain. "This was torn off in a struggle. Look, the clasp is bent." Poirot's telegram arrived at 6:42, delivered by a sodden messenger who refused to step inside. Inspector Japp had wired from Scotland Yard, "Hercule Poirot en route. Do not disturb scene." The storm broke then, rain lashing the windows like thrown gravel. Lightning illuminated the room in stark white flashes. Evelyn's body on the rug, the shattered teacup, the locket glinting like a malevolent eye. In the silence that followed, Clara whispered, "She kept the sugar bowl in her room. Said no one else could be trusted with it." Reginald's head snapped up. "What did you say?" But Clara was already fleeing toward the servants' stairs, her sobs echoing down the corridor. Arthur lit another cigarette with shaking hands. "Well, this is a pretty kettle of fish." Victoria closed the locket with a soft click. "Whoever killed her wanted something. This locket, perhaps, or what was inside." Reginald stared at the body of his wife, and for the first time his hands trembled. "Lock the doors," he said. "No one in or out until Poirot arrives." Outside, the fog thickened, swallowing the world. Inside, the clock struck 7. Somewhere in the house, a door creaked open and closed again. The game had begun. Chapter 2, The Arrival of the Little Belgian. The Daimler's headlamps carved twin tunnels through the fog as it growled up the gravel drive at 20 minutes past 8. The storm had settled into a steady, mournful rain. Every drop struck the windscreen like a thrown pebble. Inside the car, Hercule Poirot sat very upright, gloved hands folded over the head of his Malacca cane. His green eyes, sharp as cut emeralds, reflected the dashboard glow. "Mon ami Japp," he murmured, "this English weather, it is not merely damp, it is conspiratorial." Chief Inspector Japp, wedged beside him in a damp mackintosh, grunted. "Murder usually is, Poirot. Lady Evelyn Hargrove, poisoned in her own drawing room. Arsenic in the tea, they think. Local man's out of his depth. Thought you'd fancy a weekend puzzle." Poirot's mustache twitched with satisfaction. "A puzzle, yes, but one must never underestimate the malice of the domestic hearth." The car halted beneath the porte-cochere. A footman, pale, young, eyes wide as saucers, opened the door. Poirot descended with the neat precision of a cat alighting from a wall. Rain hissed on the gravel. Somewhere above, a gargoyle spat water from a broken gutter. Inside, the hall smelled of wet wool and old grief. Constable Briggs stood guard, helmet tucked beneath one arm, the other hand hovering near his whistle. He saluted Japp. "Scenes untouched, sir. Families in the morning room, doctors with the body. Poirot removed his hat, shaking off droplets like a fastidious spaniel. The body, she remains where she fell? Aye, sir. Lord Hargrove's orders. Bien. Poirot's gaze swept the hall, the grandfather clock ticking with ponderous solemnity, the suit of armor reflecting his diminutive silhouette, the faint smear of mud on the turkey runner. Someone had tracked in from the garden path. He filed it away. Jap led the way. The drawing-room doors stood ajar. Lamplight spilled across the threshold like molten butter. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of cold tea, burnt scones, and something sharper. Bitter almonds. Lady Evelyn lay on her side, one arm flung outward as though reaching for the shattered teacup. Her face was congested, lips purple, eyes staring at a point just beyond the ceiling. The locket, gold broken chain coiled like a dead serpent, rested inches from her fingertips. The photograph inside had been prized fully open. The torn half lay beside it, revealing a complete image. A young officer smiling, one arm around a radiant girl who could only be Evelyn herself, 30 years younger. Poirot knelt, heedless of his trousers. He lifted the locket with a silk handkerchief. The chain. She was wearing it when she died? Dr. Hargreaves, crouched nearby, nodded. Snapped clean during the convulsions, I'd say. Or torn. Torn, Poirot repeated softly. He studied the jagged edges. Gold is soft, yes, but this break is violent. See the burrs? Jap scratched his chin. Struggle? Or passion? Poirot's eyes flicked to the tea things. The spode pot stood intact, lid askew. One cup, Evelyn's, lay in fragments. The others were untouched. The poison was selective, personal. He rose, turning to the room's occupants. They had been herded to the far end beneath the tapestry of Paris and the goddesses. Lord Reginald stood rigid, fists clenched at his sides. Arthur lounged against a cabinet, cigarette smoldering, though his foot tapped a nervous tattoo. Victoria Beaumont sat very straight on a gilt chair, gloved hands folded, but her eyes were bright, too bright. Clara Winters hovered by the door, apron twisted into a rope. Poirot bowed. Mesdames, Messieurs, I am Hercule Poirot. You will forgive the intrusion, but murder, she is a jealous mistress. She demands all our attention. Reginald's voice was gravel. Get on. With it, man. My wife is dead. Précisément. Poirot's gaze lingered on the sugar bowl, Meissen lid missing, a faint white residue inside. Who prepared the tea? Clara stepped forward, curtsying awkwardly. I did, sir. Boiled the water, warmed the pot, measured the leaves. The sugar. Her voice cracked. Lady Evelyn kept her own bowl in her room. Said the kitchen sugar was lumpy. I fetched it myself at 4 o'clock. Poirot's eyebrows ascended. And this bowl? It was empty when you collected it? No, sir. Full. I carried it down on a tray with the cups. Arthur exhaled smoke. Clara's been with us forever. If she wanted Aunt Evelyn dead, she'd have done it years ago with a rolling pin. Clara flushed crimson. Victoria's laugh was brittle. Really, Arthur? Poirot ignored them. He lifted the bowl, tilting it to the light. A faint crystalline film clung to the porcelain. Arsenic, one presumes. But how introduced? The leaves? The water? Non, the sugar. Intimate, trusted. Reginald's jaw worked. Evelyn took 3 lumps. Always 3. Always, Poirot echoed. He turned to Jap. The kitchen staff, interviewed. Cook's hysterical. Scullery maid saw nothing. Gardener, Thorne, was in the potting shed all afternoon. Thorne, Poirot repeated. The one who keeps rat poison? Jap nodded. Arsenic trioxide. Standard issue. Poirot moved to the French windows. Rain streaked the panes. Beyond the garden was a black void. He opened the door a crack. Cold, wet air rushed in, carrying the scent of chrysanthemums and turned earth. On the threshold, a single muddy footprint, small, narrow heel. A woman's shoe. "Someone went out this way," he said. "After the murder or before?" Arthur stubbed out his cigarette. "The doors were locked at tea time. Aunt insisted, said the fog brought burglars." "Yet footprints do not lie." Poirot closed the door. "We will speak with Monsieur Thorne. But first the locket." Poirot held it to the lamp. The photograph was creased, the young officer's face earnest beneath a peaked cap. On the back, faint ink, E&R Forever, 1915. "R?" Poirot mused. "Reginald?" Lord Hargrove's face was stone. "My brother Robert. He died at Ypres. Evelyn was engaged to him before—" He stopped. "Before she married you," Poirot finished gently. "And the locket? She wore it always?" "Like a hair shirt," Reginald muttered. Victoria spoke for the first time, her voice low. She said it reminded her of what she'd lost, and what she'd gained. Her glance at Reginald was unreadable. Clara began to cry softly. Poirot pocketed the locket. "Now we reconstruct. Mademoiselle Winters, show me exactly where you stood when you poured." Clara obeyed, trembling. Poirot watched her hands. Quick, practiced, but the left one bore a fresh scratch, 3 parallel lines. "From the rose trellis?" he asked. She stared. I pruned the climbers this morning for the dinner table." "Thorns," Poirot said. "They leave distinctive marks." Arthur laughed nervously. "Really, Poirot, you'll be measuring our shoe sizes next." "An excellent idea." Poirot's smile was wintry. "But first the sugar bowl goes to the laboratory, and no one touches the tea things." He dismissed them with a wave. In the corridor, Japp caught his arm. "Well?" Poirot's eyes gleamed. "The stage is set, mon ami. We have jealousy, greed, betrayal, and a locket that should have stayed buried with the war. But observe, the poisoner knew Madame's habits intimately. 3 lumps, her own bowl, the doors locked from within. Yet a footprint leads outward. Contradictions, they are the breadcrumbs." A door slammed upstairs. Footsteps hurried. Clara's voice, high and panicked. "It's gone! The spare key to the mistress's room." Poirot's mustache curled with satisfaction. "Ah, the second act begins." He started for the stairs, Japp puffing behind. Behind them, in the drawing room, the fire settled into embers, and Lady Evelyn's eyes stared sightlessly at the ceiling, as though even in death she watched the unraveling of her carefully guarded secrets. Somewhere in the house, a clock chimed the half-hour. The fog pressed closer, and the rain kept its relentless counsel. Chapter 3. Whispers in the Library. The library of Hargrove Manor was a cavern of mahogany and memory. Moonlight, thin as watered milk, seeped through the tall, mullioned windows and laid silver bars across the turkey carpet. Shelves rose 2 stories high, reached by a wrought-iron spiral stair that creaked like an old man's knees. The air smelled of vellum, cigar ash, and the ghost of lavender water. At the room's heart stood a partner's desk the size of a billiard table, its green leather top scarred with ink rings and the faint outline of a brandy glass. A single lamp burned, its shade tilted so the light pooled on a silver tray. Whiskey decanter, 3 glasses, one already used. Hercule Poirot entered without ceremony, Malacca cane tapping a measured rhythm. Behind him, Inspector Japp closed the double doors with the reverence of a verger. The click of the latch sounded final. "Lock it," Poirot instructed. Japp obeyed. They were alone with the house's pulse, the tick of a long-case clock, the sigh of wind in the chimney, the occasional drip of rain from a cracked gutter. Poirot laid the broken locket on the blotter. The gold caught the lamplight and threw it back like a challenge. "Now," he said softly, "we begin the Vray inquest." He drew a small magnifying lens from his waistcoat and bent over the locket. The chain links were twisted, the clasped tongue bent inward. Observe, Jap. The break is not clean. Gold does not fracture thus unless forced. A sudden jerk, perhaps, by a hand stronger than the wearer's. Jap leaned. In struggle or desperation? Poirot turned the locket over. On the reverse, beneath the hallmark, faint scratches formed letters. R.H. to E.S. 1914. Robert Hargrove to Evelyn Sinclair, her maiden name. A gift before the trenches. He opened the locket. The photograph had been mended with a strip of transparent tape. Someone's hasty repair. The young officer's face was clear now, smiling, one arm around a girl whose eyes shone with the reckless hope of youth. Poirot's gaze flicked to the desk. A brass paper knife lay beside a stack of correspondence. One envelope, thick cream vellum, bore the crest of a London solicitor. It was slit open, inside a single sheet. Last will and testament of Evelyn Mary Hargrove, née Sinclair, he read aloud. Dated 3 days ago. Curious, non? Jap whistled. She changed it? Radically. Poirot scanned the page. To her husband the house and entailed land. To Arthur a legacy of £5,000 contingent on his marrying within the year. To Victoria Beaumont her pearl necklace and a bequest of £2,000. To Clara Winters. He paused. The residue of the estate, including all unentailed investments upon condition that she remain in service until Lady Evelyn's death. Jap's eyebrows shot up. The maid inherits the bulk? If she outlives her mistress. A powerful motive, would you not say? Footsteps sounded in the corridor, heavy, impatient. A fist hammered the door. Poirot, open up, Lord Reginald's voice thick with whiskey. Poirot sighed. One moment, my lord. He slipped the will into his pocket and unlocked the door. Reginald stormed in, face mottled. What the devil are you playing at? My wife lies dead and you lock yourselves away like conspirators. Precisely to prevent conspiracy, Poirot replied smoothly. Please sit. Reginald hesitated, then dropped into a leather wing chair. The springs groaned. Poirot resumed his place behind the desk. Milord, the locket. Your brother gave it to Evelyn? Reginald's jaw worked. Yes. Robert was the golden boy. Gallant, handsome, destined for greatness. Then a German shell at Passchendaele turned him into mud and memory. He stared at his hands. Evelyn never forgave the world for that. Or you, perhaps, for surviving. Reginald's head snapped up. What are you implying? Only that grief curdles easily into resentment. Poirot opened a drawer and withdrew the sugar bowl, now wrapped in oilskin. This contained arsenic, enough to kill a regiment of rats or one woman who took 3 lumps. Reginald paled. Clara brought it down. Ask her. I have. She claims it was full when she fetched it from Lady Evelyn's dressing table at 4 o'clock. Yet the laboratory will confirm the arsenic was crystalline, not powdered. It would take time to dissolve in cold tea. Someone substituted the contents after Clara left the kitchen, but before she served. Reginald's fingers drummed the armrest. The footman, Jenkins, carried the tray from the pantry, or cook. Both were occupied, and the tray was left unattended in the corridor for 3 minutes while Clara answered your summons to the morning room. Reginald's eyes narrowed. You've been busy. Murder waits for no man. Poirot leaned forward. Tell me about the argument you had with your wife yesterday morning. Reginald's hand went to his tie. A private matter. Murder makes all matters public. A long silence. Then, she accused me of indiscretions with a woman in London, threatened to cut me off entirely. And the new will? Reginald started. How did you... Poirot tapped the pocket where the document lay. She showed it to you? No. She threatened to. Said I'd be left with the house and nothing to keep it warm. The door opened again, this time without knocking. Victoria Beaumont glided in, wrapped in a dressing gown of peacock silk. Her hair was loose, a dark river over her shoulders. "Reginald, darling, you'll catch your death." She placed a proprietary hand on his shoulder. "Monsieur Poirot, must you interrogate us at this hour?" "Murder is indifferent to clocks, madame." Poirot studied her reflection in the polished desk, eyes red-rimmed, but the pupils pinpricks. Laudanum, perhaps. "You were Lady Evelyn's confidant?" Victoria's smile was brittle. "For 20 years. We shared everything, except, it seems, her final secret." "The locket?" "Among other things." She touched her throat where the pearls had been replaced by a black velvet ribbon. "Evelyn believed Robert's ghost haunted her. She kept his letters in a cedar box under her bed. I read them once. Passionate, desperate. He begged her to wait. And she married your husband instead." Victoria's fingers tightened on Reginald's shoulder. "Needs must." The estate was crumbling. Love is a luxury the aristocracy cannot afford. Poirot's gaze flicked to the bookshelves. A gap between Debrett's Peerage and a folio of Hogarth prints caught his eye. He rose, cane tapping, and slid his hand into the space. His fingers closed on a small leather-bound journal. "Property of E.H.," he read. "Her diary?" Victoria's breath hitched. She burned her diaries years ago. Yet this survived. Poirot opened it to the last entry, dated the previous night. The ink was fresh, the handwriting hurried. "He knows about the jewels. If I die, the locket will lead Clara to the rose arbor. Forgive me, R. I should have told you." Reginald lurched to his feet. "Jewels? What jewels?" Poirot closed the diary. "Your wife, milord, was not merely sentimental, she was strategic. Family diamonds smuggled from France in 1914, hidden when the estate faced ruin. Worth a king's ransom." Victoria's hand flew to her mouth. "She told me they were lost in the war." "Lost?" Poirot echoed. "Or buried beneath the roses?" A soft knock. Clara slipped in, eyes swollen, carrying a small tin box. "You asked for the mistress's keys, sir." Poirot took the box. Inside, a Yale key, a mortise, and a tiny brass key no longer than his thumb. "This one," Clara nodded. "Opens the cedar box under her bed. She made me swear never to touch it." Poirot pocketed the keys. "You loved her, mademoiselle?" Clara's voice was a whisper. "She was all I had. Harsh, yes, but she gave me a roof. A name. Yet the will leaves you rich beyond dreams." Clara's eyes widened. I didn't know." Reginald rounded on her. "Liar! You poisoned the sugar." "Enough!" Poirot's voice cracked like a whip. "Accusations without proof are the luxury of fools. Jap, escort Mademoiselle Winters to her room. Lock the door from the outside." Clara began to sob. Jap led her away. Victoria watched them go, then turned to Poirot. "What now?" "Now, madame, we search the rose arbor, but first—" He opened the French windows. The night air rushed in, cold and wet. "We follow the footprints." Outside, the fog had lifted just enough to reveal the garden path, gravel, then lawn, then the dark bulk of the greenhouse. A single set of prints, small, heeled, led from the drawing-room doors to the rose arbor and vanished into the earth. Poirot knelt. The soil was soft, recently turned. A faint metallic glint caught his eye, a brass button engraved with the Hargrove crest. He straightened, eyes gleaming. "The game, mes amis, grows interesting." Behind him, the library clock struck 1. Somewhere in the house, a floorboard creaked. Once, deliberately. Poirot closed the windows and turned the key. "Tomorrow," he said, "we dig for diamonds. And for truth." Chapter 4. The nephew's secret dawn came reluctantly to Hargrove Manor. a thin pewter light that seeped through the fog like watered ink. The storm had spent itself in the night, leaving only a dripping silence and the smell of wet earth. In the billiard room, oak-paneled green baize table scarred with cigarette burns, Arthur Hargrove stood alone beneath a portrait of his great-grandfather in hussar's braid. He was fully dressed, though the clock had not yet struck 6. Dove-gray suit, collar stiff, tie knotted with military precision. Yet his eyes were red-rimmed, and the hand holding the cigarette trembled. Hercule Poirot entered without knocking, Malacca cane silent on the thick carpet. Behind him, Inspector Japp carried a small leather notebook and the air of a man who had slept in his clothes. "Bonjour, Monsieur Hargrove," Poirot said pleasantly. "You rise early for a gentleman of leisure." Arthur started, ash scattering across the bays. "Couldn't sleep. House feels like a tomb." He attempted a smile. It slid off his face like water. "Care for a game? 100 up?" Alas, the little gray cells prefer puzzles of a different sort. Poirot circled the table, trailing gloved fingers over the ivory balls. "Tell me about Monte Carlo." Arthur's cue clattered against the cushion. "What the devil?" "3 weeks ago, the Casino de Paris. You lost 12,000 francs at Chemin de Fer, then another 8,000 the following night. Your aunt refused to cover the debt, non?" Arthur's laugh was hollow. "Family gossip travels faster than the Orient Express. Yes, I was foolish, but murder." "Good Lord, Poirot, I'm not a monster." "Only a desperate man," Poirot corrected gently. He produced a folded telegram from his pocket. Yellow paper, Western Union crest. "From your bank in London, overdraft £4,000, creditors threatening attachment of your allowance. Your aunt's death would cancel the debt, oui? The new will leaves you 5,000 if you marry within the year." Arthur paled. "I didn't know about the will. Yet you were seen near the tea tray at 3:47 p.m. fetching biscuits, you claimed." "Clara says the tray was unattended for 3 minutes while she answered Lord Reginald's summons." 3 minutes. Ample time to lace sugar. Arthur stubbed out the cigarette with unnecessary violence. "I was in the pantry looking for Madeleine's. Ask the footman. Jenkins saw you enter the corridor, not the pantry." Poirot's voice remained mild. "And this—" He laid a kid glove on the table, pale suede, monogrammed AH in faded gold. "Found in the potting shed beside the arsenic tin." Arthur stared as though it were a scorpion. "That's not mine. I haven't a pair of suede gloves." "Yet the monogram is unmistakable, and the shed door was forced last night. Someone sought to plant evidence, perhaps?" Japp cleared his throat. "We also found this, sir." He produced a crumpled letter from his pocket, sealed with violet wax. "In Miss Winter's room, hidden beneath the mattress." Poirot slit the envelope with the paper knife. The stationery was heavy, decal-edged, scented faintly with tuberose. "My dearest Clara, if anything should happen to me, know that you are the daughter I never bore. The jewels are yours by right, buried beneath the sundial in the rose garden, wrapped in oilskin. The locket holds the map. Forgive my harshness, it was fear, not hatred. Burn this." E. Arthur read over Poirot's shoulder. "Daughter? Clara?" "Illegitimate, one presumes," Poirot murmured. "Born 1910, perhaps, to a housemaid dismissed for immorality. Lady Evelyn took her in as an act of contrition, or control." Arthur sank onto the billiard table's edge. "Explains why Aunt never sacked her, no matter how Clara blundered. But jewels? I thought the diamonds were sold to pay death duties after the war." "Apparently not." Poirot tapped the letter. "The sundial. We must excavate at once." They gathered in the rose garden at 7:30, the sky still the color of wet slate. The arbor was a tunnel of thorny arches, the blooms heavy with rain. "The sundial," Verdigris bronze, Roman numerals worn smooth, stood at the center, its gnomon pointing accusingly at the heavens. Constable Briggs arrived with a spade. Lord Reginald, Victoria, and Clara were summoned, the latter still in her dressing gown, eyes swollen. Clara carried the cedar box from beneath Evelyn's bed. Poirot held the tiny brass key. "Mesdames, Messieurs," Poirot announced, "we seek truth beneath the roses." He unlocked the box. Inside, a bundle of letters tied with faded ribbon, a baptismal medal, and a folded sheet of vellum. Poirot unfolded it carefully. It was a hand-drawn map, ink faded to sepia, showing the garden, the sundial marked with an X. A dotted line led to the base of the plinth. Briggs dug. The soil was soft, loamy, the spade bit deep. At 18 inches, metal rang on metal, a small tin box, rusted, wrapped in oilskin. Poirot lifted it reverently. Inside, a chamois pouch. He loosened the drawstring. Diamonds spilled into his palm, fire even in the dull light. A necklace, earrings, a brooch shaped like a lover's knot. 50 carats, perhaps more. Victoria gasped. The Sinclair diamonds, lost since 1918. Reginald's face was thunder. Evelyn hid them? All these years? Clara touched the baptismal medal with trembling fingers. "She kept me hidden too." Arthur stared at the jewels, calculating. "Worth $250,000 easy. Enough to pay my debts 10 times over." Poirot closed the pouch. "Enough to kill for, certainly." Back in the library, Poirot laid the pieces on the desk like a jeweler arranging gems. The locket, the map, the will, the glove, the letter. The suspects sat in a semicircle, the air thick with suspicion. "Observe," Poirot began. "The poisoner required 3 things: access to arsenic, knowledge of Lady Evelyn's habits, and opportunity during the 3 minutes the tray was unattended." Clara fetched the sugar bowl at 4 o'clock. Arthur was seen in the corridor at 3:47. Lord Reginald summoned Clara at 3:50, confirmed by the hall clock. Victoria was in the morning room writing letters. Or so she claims. Victoria's chin lifted. "I have the note paper to prove it. Stamped with yesterday's date, oui, but written in fresh ink." Poirot produced a sheet from his pocket, identical notepaper, but the ink still wet. "A forgery, perhaps?" Victoria paled. I rewrote a letter this morning, the original smudged." "Convenient." Poirot turned to Clara. "Mademoiselle, the scratch on your hand, thorn marks, you said. Yet the roses were pruned yesterday morning. The scratches are fresh." Clara hid her hand. I brushed against the trellis when I ran for the doctor." Reginald snorted. "Lies upon lies." Poirot raised a hand. "Patience. Now the footprint from the drawing room to the arbor. Small. Heel, size 4. Clara wears 5s. Victoria 3s. The glove, Arthur's monogram, but the suede is left-handed. Arthur is right-handed. Someone seeks to mislead us." Arthur exhaled shakily. "Then who?" Poirot's eyes gleamed. "The one who benefits most from confusion, but first." He opened the cedar box again, removing the bundle of letters. The top one was addressed in a bold masculine hand. "My darling E," he read aloud. "Ypres, 1917. If I do not return, promise me you'll keep the diamonds safe. They are Clara's birthright. Our daughter, born in secret. Marry Reginald if you must, but never forget." Gasps rippled through the room. Clara began to weep silently. Reginald stood slowly. "Robert's child? All these years?" Poirot closed the letter. Lady Evelyn lived in terror that the truth would ruin her. She controlled Clara with kindness and cruelty, but someone discovered the secret and the jewels. He turned to Arthur. "Your debts are real, but the glove was planted after the murder during the night. You were seen asleep in the smoking room at 2 a.m. by the night footman." Arthur sagged with relief and dawning suspicion. "Then who?" A scream cut the air, high, terrified. The maid, Jenkins' wife, burst through the door. The attic! Someone's been in Lady Evelyn's trunks, papers scattered, a knife. Poirot was already moving. Vite! The killer seeks the final piece. They thundered up the servants' stairs, the house groaning around them. In the attic, moonlight slanted through a dormer. Trunks gaped open, linings slashed. On the floor lay a torn photograph, half of the locket's image, the missing piece, and beside it a single pearl earring, blood-stained. Poirot knelt. The struggle began here. Lady Evelyn came to retrieve something, perhaps to destroy it. The killer followed. He lifted the earring. Victoria's pearls. But she was wearing the necklace at dinner. Victoria touched her ears, aghast. I lost an earring yesterday. Thought it was in the drawing room. Poirot's smile was grim. Non, madame. It was planted. Like the glove, like the footprints. Someone orchestrates a symphony of misdirection. Below, the hall clock struck 8. Footsteps echoed in the corridor, heavy, hurried. A door slammed. Poirot straightened. The mouse runs, but the trap is set. He led the way downstairs, the others trailing like condemned souls. In the hall, the front door stood ajar, fog curling in like smoke. On the step lay a single white rose, thorns dripping red. Chapter 5. The Widow's Alibi. The conservatory was a glass cathedral of steam and green shadow. Orchids drooped like exhausted dancers. A lemon tree in a terracotta pot released its sharp citrus breath every time the door opened. At the far end, a fountain, marble dolphins entwined, trickled mournfully into a lily-choked basin. The air was thick, almost tropical, and the fog outside pressed against the panes as though trying to force entry. Victoria Beaumont sat on a wrought iron bench painted the color of verdigris, a black lace shawl draped over her emerald morning gown. Her hands, gloveless now, were folded in her lap, the knuckles white. A cigarette burned between her fingers, forgotten, the ash lengthening like a gray worm. Hercule Poirot entered with the soft click of his cane, Inspector Japp a respectful step behind. The glass door sighed shut, sealing them in humid silence. Madame Beaumont, Poirot began, bowing slightly. You permit the intrusion? Victoria lifted her eyes, violet, luminous, ringed with sleepless red. Intrusion? The whole house is a cage, Monsieur Poirot. One merely chooses which bars to rattle. She gestured to the bench opposite. Poirot sat, arranging his coat with care. Japp remained standing, notebook open, pencil poised. Tell me of your movements yesterday, Poirot said. From 3 o'clock until the catastrophe. Victoria inhaled, the cigarette flaring. I was in the morning room writing letters. I had promised Evelyn a recipe for soufflé Rothschild. She was particular about her puddings. Particular in all things, Poirot murmured. Yet you were seen near the kitchen corridor at 3:52. Clara passed you carrying the tea tray. Victoria's smile was thin. Clara sees phantoms. I went to the still room for lavender water. My head ached. The storm, you understand. Naturellement. Poirot produced the blood-stained pearl earring from his waistcoat pocket and laid it on the bench between them. It gleamed like a tear. This was found in the attic among slashed trunks, one of yours? Victoria's breath caught. She touched her left earlobe. Bare. I lost it yesterday morning. Thought it fell in the drawing room. Evelyn noticed she had an eye for such details. Yet it appears in the attic beside a knife and a torn photograph. Poirot leaned forward. The attic where Lady Evelyn kept her most private papers. Someone lured her there, non? Or followed? Victoria crushed the cigarette in a saucer of sand. You think I lured her? I think someone wished to retrieve or destroy evidence. The cedar box was forced, letters scattered, but the jewels were already gone, buried beneath the sundial. He watched her face. "You knew of the diamonds?" Evelyn hinted, said they were insurance against a cold old age. She laughed when she said it. Evelyn's laughter was never kind. Poirot rose and paced the gravel path between the palms. His reflection slid across the glass, small, neat, implacable. The locket held the map. The map led to the sundial. But the map was drawn after the jewels were hidden. Someone needed the locket to find them. Someone who knew its significance. He stopped beside a display of carnivorous plants, Venus flytraps, their jaws gaping. Like these, the trap was patient. The poisoner waited until the sugar bowl was in play. 3 lumps, always 3. A ritual. Victoria's voice was low. Evelyn trusted no one with her sugar, not even Cook. She kept the bowl locked in her dressing table. Clara had the only key. Yet Clara fetched the bowl at 4 o'clock. Full, she claims. And the arsenic was crystalline, slow to dissolve. It required substitution earlier. Poirot turned. "You were in the morning room writing, but the still room is adjacent to the back stairs. A detour of 30 seconds. Victoria stood, the shawl slipping from her shoulders. "You accuse me?" "I observe. The footprint from the drawing room to the arbor, size 3, your size. The glove planted in the shed, left-handed. You are left-handed, madame. I watched you sign the visitor's book yesterday." Victoria's hand flew to her throat. "Coincidence?" "Coincidence is the refuge of the guilty." Poirot's tone softened. "But let us test the alibi. Jap, fetch the letters from the morning room." Jap departed, boots crunching on gravel. Silence stretched, broken only by the fountain's drip. Victoria lit another cigarette with shaking fingers. "You loved her once," Poirot said quietly. "Before the war. Before Reginald." Victoria's eyes filled. "We were girls together, debutantes. She had the title, I had the money. We shared secrets, gowns, dreams. Then Robert Hargrove came between us. Evelyn won him. I married money instead. But the money died with my husband, and Evelyn's fortune grew. She never let me forget. And the pearls? Gift from my late husband. Evelyn coveted them, said they matched the Sinclair diamonds. She was obsessed with completeness." Jap returned carrying a small stack of notepaper. Poirot examined the top sheet. "My dear cousin Amelia," written in violet ink, the date yesterday. But the ink was dry, the paper crisp. "Written this morning," Poirot declared. "The original was smudged, you claimed, yet the blotter in the morning room shows no trace of violet, only black, Lord Reginald's fountain pen." Victoria's composure cracked. I rewrote it for clarity, or to establish an alibi." Poirot's voice was gentle, almost sorrowful. "But the still-room bottle of lavender water, full to the brim, untouched." A sudden clatter outside the glass. Briggs, the constable, dragging a reluctant figure by the collar. Thorne, the gardener, hatless, soil under his nails, face sullen. "Found him skulking by the potting shed, sir," Briggs panted. "Arsenic tins gone. And this—" He held up a small vial, half full of white crystals. Thorne spat. "Rat poison. Been missing since yesterday. Someone's trying to frame me." Poirot took the vial, sniffed. "Arsenic trioxide, identical to the residue in the sugar bowl." He turned to Thorne. "You hated Lady Evelyn. She dismissed your brother for poaching." Thorne's eyes blazed. "Aye, and she'd have sacked me next. But I didn't kill her. I was pruning the yew hedge from 3 till 5. Ask the undergardener." "We will." Poirot dismissed him with a nod. Briggs marched Thorne away. Victoria watched, trembling. "You see, the gardener is a red herring," Poirot finished. "The arsenic was taken after the murder to mislead. Like the glove, like the earring." He faced her. "Madame, where is the matching pearl?" In my jewel case. I'll fetch it. No. Poirot raised a hand. Jap searched your room at dawn. The case contains only the necklace. The single earring was planted in the attic after the search. Victoria sank back onto the bench. Then someone is framing me. Or protecting themselves. Poirot's gaze drifted to the fountain. Beneath the lilies, something glinted. He reached in, water darkening his cuff, and drew out a small key, brass identical to the one that opened the cedar box. Another key, he murmured, hidden where only the killer would think to look. Victoria stared. I've never seen it. Yet it was in your fountain, your conservatory, your lilies. Poirot dried the key on his handkerchief. The spare key Clara reported missing last night. The one that opens Lady Evelyn's dressing table where the sugar bowl was kept. Footsteps on the gravel, rapid, agitated. Arthur burst through the door, hair disheveled, a folded paper in his fist. Poirot found this in Uncle Reginald's desk, hidden behind a false panel. He thrust it forward, a single sheet, heavy bond typed. If Evelyn dies before the new will is probated, the estate reverts to Reginald. The diamonds are the key. Silence Clara. She knows too much, no signature. But the typewriter's E was misaligned, the tail broken. Poirot's eyes gleamed. Lord Reginald's study, Remington. I noticed the flaw yesterday. Victoria laughed, sharp, bitter. So the husband plots his wife's death for diamonds he already controls. Or to prevent her from disinheriting him entirely. Poirot folded the note. But the diamonds were hidden before the new will. Someone else knew. He turned to the fountain again. The water was murky, but beneath the surface something else caught the light. A thin gold chain tangled in the lily roots. Poirot fished it out. The locket's missing half, snapped clean, the clasp intact. The chain was broken in two places, he said softly. Once in the struggle, once deliberately to separate the map from the photograph. Victoria's hand flew to her mouth. Then the killer still has the map. Non. Poirot held up the sundial map, now crumpled but intact. The map was in the cedar box. The killer sought the photograph, the half that showed Robert Hargrove's face, proof of Clara's parentage. He looked at Victoria, eyes steady. You were in the attic, madam, searching. The slashed trunks, the bloodied earring. Your earring planted to incriminate yourself, or to distract. Victoria stood swaying. I went to the attic at midnight to find Evelyn's diary. She threatened to expose my indebtedness to her. I found the trunks already ransacked. The earring was on the floor. I panicked and fled. Poirot nodded slowly. And the key in the fountain? I don't know, her voice cracked. Someone is playing us all for fools. Outside, the fog began to lift, revealing the rose arbor like a stage set. A figure moved among the thorns, small, hurried. Clara, a trowel in hand, digging frantically at the base of the sundial. Poirot's smile was grim. The mouse returns to the cheese. He started for the door, Jap close behind. Victoria followed, shawl trailing like a funeral banner. In the garden, Clara knelt in the mud, earth streaked across her apron. The hole was empty. They're gone, she whispered, looking up with tear-stained faces. The diamonds. Someone took them in the night. Poirot knelt beside her. Quand did you come here, mademoiselle? An hour ago. I couldn't sleep. The letter said they were my birthright. He lifted a clump of soil. Beneath a fresh footprint, size 3, narrow heel, pointing away from the sundial toward the greenhouse. The thief was interrupted, Poirot said. By you, perhaps, or by another. He straightened, eyes scanning the garden. The greenhouse door stood ajar, a sliver of darkness. Inside, a shadow moved. Chapter 6. The husband's confession. The study smelled of old leather, coal smoke, and the ghost of Cuban cigars. A single green banker's lamp threw a cone of light across the desk. Beyond it, the room dissolved into velvet shadow. Rain had returned, a soft, persistent drumming against the mullioned windows that sounded like impatient fingers. Lord Reginald Hargrove stood before the hearth, a crystal tumbler of whiskey in one hand, the other braced against the mantel as though the house itself might tilt. The firelight carved deep trenches in his face, ravines of fatigue, guilt, and something harder to name. Hercule Poirot entered alone. Inspector Japp waited in the corridor, guarding the door like a faithful mastiff. Poirot closed it with a soft click, then laid his cane across a chair. "Milord," he began, voice low, "the hour is late, but murder is a restless bedfellow. We must speak of endings." Reginald did not turn. "Endings, yes. Evelyn's ended on a rug older than both of us." He drained the whiskey in one swallow, the glass clinking hard against the marble. "Pour yourself one, Poirot. You'll need it." Poirot declined with a small shake of the head. He moved to the desk, gloved fingers brushing the typewriter, the Remington with the broken E. A fresh sheet lay in the carriage, half-typed. "And if the diamonds are recovered, the estate shall be divided equally between—" The sentence stopped mid-word. Poirot rolled, the platen. The paper slid free. The ink was still tacky. "You began a new will," he observed. "After your wife's death. Curious timing." Reginald's laugh was a rasp. "Trying to salvage something from the wreckage. The old will leaves Clara everything. My brother's bastard gets the fortune I bled for." Poirot placed the broken locket on the blotter. The gold caught the lamplight and flung it back like a dare. This held the map to the diamonds. The map led to the sundial. But the diamonds are gone, taken in the night by someone who knew exactly where to dig. Someone who watched Clara discover the empty hole at dawn. Reginald finally faced him. His eyes were bloodshot, but steady. "You think I crept out in the mud like a common thief? I think you crept out in desperation. The note found in your desk, silence Clara, she knows too much, your typewriter, your phrasing. You feared exposure, the forged codicil to the 1928 will, the one that transferred the unentailed investments to your name. Evelyn discovered it yesterday. She confronted you in this very room at 11:47 a.m. The footman heard raised voices through the door. Reginald's shoulders sagged. She waved the codicil like a battle standard. Said she'd have me in the dock for fraud, divorce, ruin." He poured another whiskey, hands trembling now. "I begged. She laughed. Said the diamonds would go to Clara, Robert's daughter, and I'd be left with the house and the dry rot." Poirot circled slowly. "So you poisoned the sugar. You had access. Clara left the bowl on the dressing table while she fetched Evelyn's shawl. 3 minutes. You substituted the crystals, arsenic from the shed, taken days earlier under cover of rat extermination." Reginald stared into the fire. "I didn't mean to kill her. Only to incapacitate. A warning. Enough to make her bedridden, give me time to destroy the codicil, but she took 3 lumps. Always 3. His voice cracked. "God help me, I watched her stir them in." Poirot stopped behind the desk chair. "Yet the chain was broken during the struggle. The attic, slashed trunks, the bloodied earring. You followed her there at 4 o'clock after she dismissed the tea tray. She went to retrieve the codicil from its hiding place. You argued. She tore the locket from her neck to strike you. The clasp snapped. You forced the poisoned tea upon her, held the cup to her lips until she swallowed." Reginald's head snapped up. "No, I never—" "The fibers on the broken chain," Poirot continued relentlessly, "match the cuff of your smoking jacket, Harris tweed unique weave. Forensics confirmed it this afternoon. And the footprint to the arbor, Size 10 hobnailed boot. Your gardening boots, my lord. Mud still wet when Briggs examined them at 6. Reginald sank into the chair opposite Poirot, the fight draining from him like blood from a wound. I went back for the diamonds after midnight. Thought if I had them I could buy silence. Clara's, Victoria's, the solicitor's, but the hole was empty. Someone beat me to it. Clara, Poirot said softly. She dug at dawn, yes, but the earth was already disturbed. The diamonds were taken before midnight, by the person who planted the glove, the earring, the spare key, the person who has orchestrated this symphony of false notes. Reginald frowned. Then I'm not the only— You are the killer, Poirot cut in, but not the puppet master. Someone used your crime. Someone who knew about the arsenic, the sugar ritual, the hidden jewels. Someone intimate with the house's secrets. He opened a drawer and withdrew a small envelope. Inside, a single white rat, exquisitely carved from sugar, its eyes tiny seeds of arsenic. Found in Clara's apron pocket, she laced the kitchen sugar for rats, standard practice. You substituted her poison into Evelyn's bowl. Unwitting accomplice. Reginald buried his face in his hands. I thought if Clara were blamed, the will would be void, contestable. A soft knock. Jap entered, hat in hand. Greenhouse is locked, sir. No sign of the diamonds, but Thorne's alibied. Undergardener confirms he was burning clippings till 2 a.m., and Miss Beaumont's fountain drained it. Only the key and the chain fragment. Poirot nodded. Bien. Bring the others to the drawing room in 20 minutes. It is time for the final tableau. Reginald looked up, eyes hollow. Will you arrest me now? Patience, my lord. Justice is a dish best served with all the guests present. Poirot gathered the locket, the forged note, the sugar rat. One more thing, the cellar, the poison reserves. Someone removed a second tin of arsenic last night. To silence another witness, perhaps. Reginald flinched. I took nothing else. Someone did. Poirot's gaze was steady. And they left a calling card. He produced a small card, thick, cream, embossed with a tiny crest, a phoenix rising. Victoria Beaumont's personal stationery. Reginald stared. She was in here yesterday, borrowing my pen, said hers had run dry. Poirot slipped the card into his pocket. Dry ink, wet lies. Come, my lord, the stage awaits. They walked the corridor in silence, the house creaking around them like an old ship. Portraits watched with painted disdain. In the hall, the grandfather clock struck the quarter, its chimes muffled as though mourning. At the drawing-room doors, Poirot paused. One last piece, my lord. The torn photograph, the half found in the attic. It was not Robert's face that was slashed. It was yours. The young officer had been cut away years ago. The remaining half showed Evelyn and a child. Clara, aged 5. Proof of paternity. Reginald closed his eyes. Evelyn kept it to torment me. Said if I ever strayed again, she'd ruin us both. Poirot pushed open the doors. The room was lit by a dozen candles. Electricity failed again, flickering over the Persian rug where Evelyn had died. The tea stain had darkened to rust. Arthur stood by the window, smoking furiously. Victoria sat on the sofa, pale but composed, a fresh pearl at each ear. Clara knelt by the hearth, laying coal with mechanical precision, her apron spotless now. Poirot entered like a ringmaster. Madame, Monsieur, the curtain falls. He placed the evidence on the low table. Locket, map, will, glove, earring, sugar rat, phoenix card. The candle flames trembled. Lord Reginald has confessed to the poisoning, Poirot announced. Gasps rippled. But the diamonds, the true prize, were stolen by another. Someone who knew every secret, every hiding place. Someone who planted clues to deflect suspicion. Someone who watched Clara dig an empty hole and smiled. All eyes turned to Clara. She froze, coal scuttle in hand. Poirot's voice softened. Mademoiselle Winters, you are Robert Hargrove's daughter. The diamonds are your birthright, but you did not kill for them. You killed to protect the inheritance. Clara's eyes widened. No! The spare key in the fountain. You hid it there after unlocking the cellar to remove the second arsenic tin. You intended to silence Lord Reginald tonight. Another accident. But Victoria's card was in the cellar too. She followed you. She took the diamonds while you slept. Victoria laughed, sharp as breaking glass. Absurd! Poirot produced the Phoenix card. Your stationery, madame, found beside the empty tin, and your fountain, drained this afternoon, yielded this. He held up a tiny oilskin packet, sodden but intact. Inside, 3 diamonds winking like malevolent eyes. Victoria lunged for the door. Jap caught her wrist. Easy, ma'am. Reginald stared at the diamonds, then at Poirot. She played us all. Oui, Poirot said. She learned of the jewels from Evelyn's drunken confidence months ago. She waited. When Reginald poisoned the tea, she saw opportunity. She followed Evelyn to the attic, slashed the trunks, planted the earring. She took the diamonds under cover of the search for the spare key. She framed Clara, Arthur, Thorne, anyone but herself. Clara began to sob. I only wanted what was mine. Poirot's gaze was compassionate. And you shall have justice, not vengeance. He turned to Jap. Arrest them both. Lord Reginald for murder, Madame Beaumont for theft and conspiracy after the fact. As handcuffs clicked, the candles guttered. Outside, the rain eased to a whisper. Dawn was near. In the hearth, a log collapsed into ember. The house exhaled. Chapter 7. Threads of Deceit. The drawing room had become a courtroom without robes or wigs. Candles guttered in their sconces, throwing long shadows that danced like guilty consciences across the walls. The Persian rug still bore the dark bloom of Evelyn's tea stain. No one had dared roll it away. At the center table, Poirot stood like a diminutive judge, the evidence arrayed before him. The broken locket, the sundial map, the sugar rat, the Phoenix card, the 3 recovered diamonds glinting like drops of frozen fire. Lord Reginald sat handcuffed to Constable Briggs, his face the color of old parchment. Victoria Beaumont stood beside Jap, wrists bound with his handkerchief, silk against silk, her eyes blazing defiance. Arthur paced the hearth, cigarette forgotten between his fingers. Clara knelt on the rug, apron over her face, shoulders shaking with silent sobs. Poirot's voice cut the hush. Mes amis, the tapestry unravels. Lord Reginald poisoned the tea, confessed. Madame Beaumont stole the diamonds, confessed. Yet the pattern is incomplete. Someone wove the red herrings, the planted glove, the bloodied earring, the footprints in the arbor. Someone turned murder into a labyrinth. He lifted the locket. This held not one secret but 3. First, the map to the jewels. Second, the photograph, proof of Clara's parentage. Third, he turned the gold oval. A hairline seam glinted. A hidden compartment. With a thumbnail he pressed. The back sprang open. Inside lay a folded slip no larger than a postage stamp. Poirot unfolded it beneath the lamp. A single name. Thorne. Gasps rippled. The gardener, dismissed hours ago, was suddenly central. Thorne, Poirot repeated. Not the killer, but the catalyst. Lady Evelyn discovered he was blackmailing Clara, £5 a week to keep silent about her birth. Evelyn paid once, then decided to end it. She confronted Thorne in the potting shed yesterday at 2 o'clock. He demanded the diamonds as final payment. She refused. He threatened exposure. Arthur stopped pacing. Thorne, the man's a clod. A clod with ambition, Poirot said. He took the arsenic tin before the murder to frame himself, then clear himself with an alibi. He planted the glove in the shed, knowing we would dismiss him when the undergardener confirmed his presence at the bonfire. A double bluff. Victoria laughed bitterly, and I walked into it. He must have followed me to the sundial, taken the diamonds while I searched the attic. Reginald stirred. Then Clara knew nothing of the blackmail, Poirot said. She believed the jewels were her birthright alone. Thorne used her fear. He left the spare key in the fountain to implicate Victoria, her conservatory, her lilies. He slashed the trunks to suggest a frantic search. He tore the photograph to destroy the proof of paternity. Clara lifted her head, eyes swollen. I found the key missing after supper. I thought Lady Evelyn had taken it back. Poirot's gaze softened. Non, mademoiselle. Thorne took it when you pruned the roses yesterday. He watched the house like a hawk watches a dovecote. He turned to Jap. Search the potting shed again. Beneath the floorboards. Thorne's brother was a poacher. He taught him hiding places. Jap departed at a run, Briggs following. The room waited, breath held. Poirot continued. The arsenic in the sugar was Reginald's act, desperate, clumsy. But the timing was Thorne's suggestion. He knew Evelyn's ritual, knew Clara fetched the bowl at 4. He whispered to Reginald in the gun room at noon, "One dose in the sugar, she'll sicken, you'll have time to destroy the codicil." Reginald panicked, obeyed. Reginald's head bowed. He said it would only make her ill, I swear it. Intent is irrelevant, Poirot said. Death was the result. The door burst open. Jap returned triumphant, a grimy oilskin packet in hand. Inside, the missing diamonds, the blackmail notes, and a small ledger. Thorne's accounts, 5-pound entries marked CW. Enough to hang him, Jap said. Poirot nodded. Thorne will be arrested at the village inn. He keeps a room there. But the web is wider. Victoria discovered the theft at midnight, confronted Thorne in the greenhouse. He offered her a share to keep silent. She took 3 stones as earnest, hid them in the fountain. She planned to retrieve the rest after we left. Victoria's chin lifted. A girl must eat. Arthur crushed his cigarette in the grate. And me? The glove? Thorne stole it from your room weeks ago, Poirot said. He knew of your debts, planted it to muddy the waters. He even forged the anonymous note in Reginald's typewriter, knowing the broken E would lead us back to the study, not to him. Clara stood slowly. Then, I'm innocent? Of murder, oui, Poirot said. Of silence, non. You knew of the blackmail, suspected Thorne, yet said nothing. Fear is a powerful chain. He gathered the evidence. The motives, Reginald, greed and fear of ruin. Victoria, greed and old jealousy. Thorne, greed and revenge for his brother's dismissal. Clara, fear of exposure. Arthur, debts but no hand in death. All threads led to the same knot, the Sinclair diamonds. The candles flickered lower. Outside, dawn painted the fog rose gold. Poirot addressed the room. Justice now weaves its own pattern. Lord Reginald, murder. Madame Beaumont, conspiracy and theft. Thorne, blackmail and accessory. Mademoiselle Winters, released. But the diamonds revert to the estate. The will stands. Clara sank to her knees again, this time in relief. Arthur lit another cigarette with shaking fingers. Victoria stared at the diamonds as though they might still save her. Reginald closed his eyes, the fight gone. Jap snapped cuffs on Victoria properly. Briggs hauled Reginald to his feet. As they filed out, Poirot lingered by the hearth. He lifted the locket one last time, the broken chain dangling like a noose. Ainsi, the past is mended, he murmured. But some links can never be reforged. A log shifted in the grate, sending up a shower of sparks. The corridor, footsteps faded. The house settled into silence, its secrets finally exhumed. But in the attic, a single trunk remained unopened, its lock freshly picked, its contents gone. A scrap of paper fluttered to the floor. More where these came from. Meet me at the sundial. Midnight. T. Poirot's eyes narrowed. The game, it seemed, was not yet over. Chapter 8. The Gathering Storm. The wind had teeth now. It tore across the Sussex Downs, howling through the chimneys of Hargrove Manor like a banshee denied entry. Rain lashed the windows in sheets, turning the glass into a moving tapestry of silver and black. Inside the great hall, the grandfather clock struck 11 with a sound like a judge's gavel. The house itself seemed to lean forward, listening. Hercule Poirot stood at the foot of the staircase, Malacca cane in one hand, the scrap of paper from the attic in the other. Meet me at the sundial. Midnight. T. The ink was fresh, the paper torn from Thorne's ledger. Japp flanked him, revolver drawn, face grim beneath the brim of his hat. Behind them, Constable Briggs gripped a lantern. Its beam jittered across the flagstones. "Thorne's fled the inn," Japp muttered. "Landlady says he packed a valise at 10, left a shilling on the counter and vanished into the storm. Horse is gone from the stables." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "He believes the diamonds are still buried. He does not know we have them. He returns to silence the last witness, Clara." They moved as one toward the drawing room. The door stood ajar. Candlelight flickered within like a heartbeat. Inside, the suspects had been gathered under guard. Arthur pacing, Victoria seated with wrists bound, Reginald slumped in a chair, Clara on the sofa clutching a rosary. The air was thick with tallow smoke and fear. Poirot raised the note. "Mesdames, Messieurs, the storm brings a final act. Thorne returns. He believes Clara can identify him as the blackmailer. He will come for her, and for the diamonds he thinks remain beneath the sundial." Clara's rosary slipped from her fingers, clattering across the parquet. "He'll kill me." "Non," Poirot said firmly. "He will try. We will be waiting." He turned to Japp. "Briggs remains here with the prisoners. You and I, Le Jardin." Arthur stepped forward. "I'm coming. Thorne framed me with that damned glove." Victoria's laugh was brittle. "Let the boy play hero. He'll only trip over his own feet." Reginald stirred. "Take my shotgun. It's in the gun room." Poirot shook his head. "No. Thorne is desperate, not suicidal. We need him alive to confess the full web." They donned oilskins and sou'westers from the cloakroom. The front door groaned open. Wind and rain roared in like an invading army. The lantern's beam cut a trembling path across the gravel. Beyond the garden was a black sea of thrashing roses and skeletal yews. The sundial stood at the arbor's heart, its bronze gnomon pointing accusingly at the storm. The hole Clara had dug at dawn gaped like a fresh grave, half filled with rainwater. Poirot knelt, lantern raised. Fresh boot prints, size 10, hobnailed, led from the greenhouse to the hole and away toward the potting shed. "Thorne has been here already," Poirot said. "He finds the earth disturbed, the diamonds gone. He will rage. He will seek Clara." A crack of thunder. Lightning illuminated the garden in stark white. The arbor, the sundial, the greenhouse door swinging on its hinges. And in the flash, a figure tall, coat flapping, moving fast toward the house. "La!" Japp hissed. They ran. Mud sucked at their boots. Rain stung their faces. The figure reached the conservatory's glass door, smashed the pane with a gloved fist, and vanished inside. Poirot and Japp followed. The conservatory was a jungle of steam and shadow. Broken glass crunched underfoot. The fountain's dolphins still wept. The Venus flytraps gaped hungrily. A trail of wet footprints led between the palms toward the inner door, the one that opened directly into the drawing room. Poirot's voice was a whip. "Vite! He means to enter through the servants' corridor." They burst into the main house. The corridor was dark, but a sliver of light spilled from the drawing room door. Briggs' voice boomed, "Stay back!" A gunshot, deafening in the enclosed space. Plaster exploded from the wall. Clara screamed. Poirot and Japp rounded the corner. Thorne stood in the doorway, shotgun raised, face streaked with mud and rain. Briggs lay groaning on the floor, blood seeping from a graze on his temple. Clara cowered behind the sofa. Arthur had grabbed the fire poker. Victoria pressed against the wall, eyes wide. "Drop it, Thorne!" Japp barked, revolver leveled. Thorne's laugh was wild. "Diamonds are mine! Clara knows too much. She'll hang with the rest." He swung the shotgun toward Clara. Arthur lunged with the poker, the barrel discharged, buckshot shredding the chandelier in a cascade of crystal. Arthur stumbled, clutching his side, blood blooming through his shirt. Poirot moved like lightning. His cane cracked across Thorne's wrist. The shotgun clattered away. Japp tackled the gardener, pinning him to the rug. Thorne thrashed, cursing, but the fight was gone. Clara crawled to Arthur, pressing her apron to his wound. "He's hit badly." Poirot knelt beside Briggs, who was already sitting up, dazed but alive. "Superficial, the storm of bullets misses its mark." He turned to Thorne, now cuffed by Japp. "You return for diamonds already in our possession. You shoot to silence Clara, but she knows only what you told her. The true architect of murder is already confessed." Thorne spat blood. "Reginald poisoned her. I only suggested the dose." "Suggested?" Reginald's voice was a croak from his chair. "You said it would sicken her, not kill." "Details," Thorne sneered. "You wanted her quiet. I wanted the diamonds. We both got more than we bargained." Victoria spoke from the wall, voice steady now. "And I was to be the scapegoat, the earring, the key, the fountain. You used me." Thorne's grin was feral. "You were greedy. Greedy people are predictable." Poirot rose. "The web is complete. Thorne, blackmail, incitement to murder, attempted murder tonight. Reginald, murder. Victoria, conspiracy and theft. Clara, innocent of blood, but complicit in silence." He looked at Arthur, pale but breathing. "Monsieur Hargrove, heroism. The wound is clean. He will live to pay his debts another day." Lightning flashed again, illuminating the shattered chandelier, the blood on the rug, the defeated faces. The storm began to ease, rain softening to a whisper. Japp hauled Thorne to his feet. "Motor's here. Cells at Lewis are ready." As they dragged him away, Thorne twisted for one last look at Clara. "The diamonds were never yours, bastard girl." Clara met his gaze, steady now. "They were my mother's, and now they'll pay for justice." The door closed. The house exhaled. Poirot surveyed the wreckage, crystal shards, blood, the faint smell of gunpowder. He picked up the broken locket from the table, its chain finally still. "Ainsi," he murmured. "The storm passes. The threads are cut." Outside, the first pale hint of dawn touched the horizon. The fog lifted, revealing the garden, roses battered but unbroken, the sundial standing sentinel. In the silence, the clock struck midnight. The case was closed, but in the attic, the unopened trunk waited, its lock gleaming. And on the floor, the scrap of paper had vanished, taken by a hand unseen. Chapter 9. The Confrontation. The drawing room had become a battlefield of candle stubs and broken crystal. Dawn's first light, thin and cold, slid through the shattered French windows and laid pale fingers across the wreckage. The Persian rug was a map of violence. Tea stain, blood from Arthur's side, plaster dust. A single shotgun pellet embedded in the wainscot. The chandelier lay in ruins, its prisms scattered like frozen tears. Hercule Poirot stood at the hearth, the broken locket in one hand, the sundial map in the other. His patent shoes were flecked with mud. His mustache, for once, drooped with fatigue. Around him, the survivors gathered in a ragged semicircle, held together less by hope than by the gravity of truth. Arthur lay on the sofa, shirt torn open, Clara's apron pressed to the wound. Blood had slowed to a seep. His face was the color of wet ash, but his eyes were open, fixed on Poirot with something between gratitude and dread. Reginald sat handcuffed to the chair, head bowed, the proud lord reduced to a broken statue. Victoria stood beside Jap, wrists raw from silk bonds now replaced with steel. Thorne, the gardener, was gone, taken to the Lewis cells an hour earlier, still cursing the storm and the diamonds he would never touch. Constable Briggs, bandaged but upright, guarded the door. Jap reloaded his revolver with methodical clicks. Outside, the wind had fallen to a whisper. The garden dripped, exhausted. Poirot raised the locket. Its gold was dulled with blood and rain, the chain severed in two places. "Mesdames, messieurs," he began, voice soft but carrying to every corner. "We have chased shadows long enough. It is time for light." He laid the locket on the table beside the map, the sugarette, the phoenix card, the 3 recovered diamonds. Then from his waistcoat he produced the final piece, the scrap of paper from the attic trunk. "Meet me at the sundial. Midnight. Tea. Now smudged with fresh mud." "Thorne wrote this," Poirot said, but he did not act alone. Someone ensured the note was found. Someone opened the attic trunk after we searched it. Someone removed the last letter, the one that would have damned them all. He turned to Clara. "Mademoiselle, you dug at the sundial at dawn. You found the hole empty, but you returned at midnight, after Thorne's arrest. Why?" Clara's hands twisted in her lap. I thought the diamonds might still be there, a second cache. Mother's letter said more where these came from." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "Yet the attic trunk was locked when Jap searched it at 10. The lock was picked after Thorne left the house. You have no pick. Who does?" Clara's gaze flicked to Victoria. "She keeps a hat pin. Long steel." Victoria laughed, sharp, incredulous. "You little snake, I was handcuffed." "No," Poirot corrected. "Jap's handkerchief bound you, silk, easily slipped. You freed yourself while we chased Thorne in the garden. You climbed the back stairs, picked the lock, removed the letter. You burned it in the conservatory stove, ashes still warm when Briggs checked it too." Victoria's smile faltered. "Prove it." Poirot produced a fragment of charred paper, edges curling. "And if Clara speaks, the child dies with her. The ink matches your fountain pen, madame. The threat was to your child, born in secret, 1916, given to a convent in Bruges. Evelyn discovered it last month. She threatened exposure unless you paid. You paid, with the 3 diamonds you took from Thorne's packet." Victoria's composure cracked like the chandelier. "She would have ruined me." "So you ruined her," Poirot said. "You learned of the poison from Thorne's whispers to Reginald. You watched Clara fetch the sugar bowl. You substituted the arsenic before Reginald, using the spare key you stole from Clara's apron while she served tea. You planted the glove, the earring, the footprints. You orchestrated the chaos to hide your motive. Not greed, but terror." Reginald stirred. "Then I was the fool. The poison was already in the sugar when Oui," Poirot said. "You forced the cup to her lips, thinking to silence her, but the dose was lethal long before. Victoria ensured it." Arthur groaned. "And the child?" "Alive," Poirot said. "In Bruges. The convent ledger confirms a donation, £5,000 wired last week. Victoria's last act before arrest." Victoria sank to her knees. "I only wanted to protect her. Evelyn would have dragged her into the scandal. The girl is all I have." Clara stood, apron falling away. You used me. My mother's death, my fear. You let Reginald think he killed her. You let Thorne think the diamonds were his. You let me believe I was alone. Poirot's voice was gentle. You were never alone, mademoiselle. The diamonds are yours, Robert Hargrove's legacy, confirmed by the letter we recovered from the attic trunk before it was tampered with. The will stands. The estate is yours. He turned to Reginald. Milord, your confession stands. Manslaughter, not murder. The dose was Victoria's. You will serve time, but not for her death. Reginald nodded, tears cutting channels through the grime on his face. I loved her, Poirot. In my way. I just couldn't lose everything. Japp snapped the cuffs tighter on Victoria. And the child? Will be brought to England, Poirot said. Under Clara's guardianship. The diamonds will fund her future, and Arthur's debts if he marries wisely. Arthur managed a weak smile. I'll take the 5,000 and a quiet life, thank you. Poirot gathered the evidence. The confrontation ends. Victoria Beaumont, murder, conspiracy, theft. Lord Reginald, manslaughter, fraud. Thorne, accessory, attempted murder. Clara, free and heiress. He looked at the broken locket one last time. The past is mended, but some links are forged in fire. They hold. Outside, the sun broke through, gilding the wet garden. The sundial cast a perfect shadow. 12 noon, though it was barely 6. Time, like truth, had righted itself. Japp led Victoria away. Briggs supported Reginald. Clara helped Arthur to his feet. The room emptied, leaving Poirot alone with the wreckage. He picked up a single prism from the chandelier floor. It caught the light, fracturing it into a rainbow. And see, he murmured, even in ruin there is beauty. A soft footstep. Clara paused at the door, eyes clear now. Monsieur Poirot, thank you. For my mother. For me. Poirot bowed. Justice, mademoiselle, is the only legacy worth inheriting. She left. The house sighed, settling into its new skin. In the hearth, the last ember died. The storm was over. But in the attic, the trunk stood open, its false bottom revealed. Beneath a final envelope, sealed, addressed to Poirot in Evelyn's hand. He slipped it into his pocket, unopened. Some truths, he decided, could wait for another dawn. Chapter 10. The Revelation. The morning after the storm was the color of washed steel. Hargrove Manor stood stripped of its fog, every cracked gargoyle and sagging gutter exposed to the pale November sun. The garden lay in ruin, roses beheaded, the sundial tilted like a drunk, the arbor's lattice splintered by wind and buckshot. Yet the air carried the clean scent of turned earth and distant wood smoke, and somewhere a robin sang with defiant cheer. Hercule Poirot stood on the terrace, overcoat buttoned to the throat, the unopened envelope from the attic trunk in his gloved hand. Behind him, the house was quiet. No footsteps, no voices, only the soft creak of old beams settling into their new destiny. The police motor had left at dawn, carrying Reginald, Victoria, and Thorne to Lewes Jail. Arthur had been taken to hospital in Brighton. Clara at his side, her inheritance papers clutched like a talisman. Poirot slit the envelope with his pocket knife. The paper inside was heavy vellum, the ink faded but steady, Evelyn's hand, written the night before her death. To be opened only by Hercule Poirot should I die by violence. He read in silence. My dear Monsieur Poirot, if you hold this, I am gone. Do not mourn. I have lived too long with ghosts. The truth is simpler than the tangle I have woven. The diamonds are Clara's by blood. Robert Hargrove was her father. I was her mother in all but name. I took her from the Foundling Hospital in 1910, claimed her as a tenant's orphan, and raised her in servitude to keep her close. Cruel, yes. Necessary, I thought. The world is unkind to bastards. Reginald forged the 1928 codicil to steal the unentailed fortune. I discovered it last week. I threatened exposure. He threatened me. Victoria learned of my secret child in Bruges. Her own shame gave her leverage. She demanded the pearls. I refused. Thorne blackmailed Clara for silence. I paid once, then planned to end him. The poison was meant for me alone. I laced my own sugar bowl at dawn, arsenic from the shed, slow but certain. I wished to die on my terms, not theirs. The locket held the map to the diamonds, the photograph, proof of Clara's birth. I tore Reginald's face from it years ago. Hatred is a sharp blade. If I miscalculated the dose, forgive me. If another hand forced the cup, find them. But give Clara the jewels, the estate, the name she was denied. Let her bury the past with me. Evelyn Hargrove, 34. October 1935. Poirot folded the letter, eyes distant. The confession was complete. Suicide, staged as murder, the chaos of motives, a smokescreen she herself had lit. Reginald's forcing of the cup, Victoria's substitution, Thorne's blackmail, all had played upon a death already in motion. He slipped the letter into his pocket and descended the terrace steps. The sundial had been righted by the undergardener. Its gnomon pointed true north. Beneath it the hole had been filled, a single white rose planted where diamonds once lay. Clara emerged from the conservatory, coat over her maid's dress, a small valise in hand. The apron was gone. In its place, a brooch, the Sinclair lover's knot, reset with a single diamond. "You leave?" Poirot asked. "For Brighton," she said. "Arthur will recover. The doctors say the bullet missed the lung. I'll nurse him then. We'll see." Her chin lifted. "The estate is mine. I'll sell the London house, pay his debts, keep this one for the village. A school, perhaps, for girls like I was." Poirot bowed. "A worthy legacy." She hesitated. "The letter, did she?" "Oui," he said gently. "She chose her end. The rest was accident and greed. You are free of it all." Clara's eyes filled, but she did not weep. She loved me in her way. I see that now. She offered her hand. Poirot took it, pressed a kiss to the knuckles. "Adieu, Mademoiselle Hargrove." She smiled at the name, her first true smile, and walked down the drive. The motor waited, engine purring. As it pulled away, she did not look back. Poirot returned to the drawing room. The wreckage had been swept, the rug rolled and stored. Sunlight streamed through clean windows, gilding the empty space where Evelyn had fallen. On the mantel, the ormolu clock ticked with steady heart. Jap entered, hat in hand. "All squared, Poirot?" "Paperwork's a nightmare. Suicide complicated by manslaughter, theft, attempted murder." "Non," Poirot interrupted. "The official record. Lady Evelyn died of arsenic poisoning administered by Lord Reginald in a moment of panic. Victoria Beaumont and Thorne accessory after the fact. The letter remains private, Evelyn's last dignity." Jap grunted. "You and your gray cells. Always a twist." Poirot picked up the broken locket from the table. He fitted the two halves together. The clasp clicked shut. Whole again. "Some things," he said, "are mended by truth." He placed the locket in a small velvet pouch and handed it to Jap. "For Clara, a keepsake. The photograph restored, both faces intact." Jap tucked it away. "Train to London leaves in an hour. Coming?" Poirot glanced around the room one last time. The tapestry of Paris and the goddesses had been rehung. The missing prism replaced. The house breathed easier, its ghosts laid to rest. "Oui," he said, "but first." He stepped into the garden. The white rose had taken root. Its petals gleamed against the dark earth. Poirot knelt, pressed a fingertip to the soil. "Reposez en paix, madame," he murmured. "Your daughter will carry the light." He rose, brushed dirt from his gloves, and walked to the waiting car. The engine turned over. Gravel crunched beneath the wheels. Hargrove Manor shrank in the rear window, its chimneys no longer smoking, its windows no longer watching. In the train compartment, Poirot opened his newspaper. The headline read, "Peer confesses to wife's poisoning. Blackmail and hidden fortune uncovered." He folded it neatly, set it aside. Jap dozed opposite. Outside, the downs rolled green and gold under a sky washed clean. Poirot touched the velvet pouch in his pocket. Inside, the locket was warm from his hand. He smiled, a small private curve of the mustache. "Ansi," he whispered to the passing fields, "the little gray cells rest until the next puzzle." The train gathered speed, London bound, another case closed, another truth revealed.